My name is Nishant Shandilya. I am the regional representative for EURAXESS Australia and New Zealand. I'm joined by two other speakers, Jacinta, who just recently finished her fellowship from University of Liverpool, and Katelin Opferkuch, who is currently doing her fellowship at Universidade, Aberta from Portugal. Thank you everyone for joining in. Just to give you a very brief idea, what we will be covering is we'll be understanding what type of PhD opportunities you can avail through the Marie Curie ITN. And then our two Marie Curie fellows will try to give you some advice, tips, and share their experience of how they went about doing their own PhDs. If you have any questions, just feel free to type in the chat function so that we will be able to take it after all the three presentations are done. To understand how well you are aware about ITN, one poll will appear on your screen, and I'd encourage you to please respond so that we are aware how well do you know the MSCA-ITN. It's just to understand what is the basic understanding. If you are quite well aware, you know somewhat, or you do not know at all. This would give me some idea of what level of depth I need to go into. So I'll give you 3 more seconds, and then I'll close the poll so that we could proceed. I can see 84% have already voted. 3, 2, 1. So I'll close the poll now, and I have pretty interesting results in front of me. 41% have said somewhat, 59% have said not at all, and 0% have said quite well. So this makes it very interesting because it is intended for everyone who is not very aware about what Marie Curie ITN does. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen so that you'll be able to look at what I am presenting. First of all, what we will focus today is PhD opportunities through the Marie Curie ITN. So because we are discussing a lot about Marie Curie, first what you need to understand is it's a part of Horizon 2020. What is Horizon 2020? It's the European Union's Research and Innovation Framework Program. It's the largest in the world regarding research and innovation, with a budget of around 80 billion euros for a period of 2014 till 2020. It's in the last year, Horizon 2020. It will be superseded by Horizon Europe. Inside Horizon 2020, there is Marie Curie Actions, which is MSCA. The acronym MSCA stands for Marie Curie Actions. It's one of the several actions that are under Horizon 2020. Marie Curie Actions has a total budget of 6.16 billion euros for the period of 2014 till 2020. So that is what we are looking at. Within Marie Curie, individual fellowship, ITN, everything that are there, it took its name from the French Polish radioactivity pioneer Marie Curie. So there are 5 actions within Marie Curie Actions, right? One of the action is the ITN, which is Innovative Training Networks. This is what we will be discussing today. So what are MSCA-ITNs? The first thing that you need to understand is these are interdisciplinary and international doctoral training programs. These are not just doctoral programs, but these are doctoral training programs. What does that mean? You need to understand that these are PhD programs which are made up of partner organizations from different sectors. Could be universities, public and private research centers, non-profit organizations, and even companies. This is specifically dedicated to training early stage researchers to become leaders in their field. So just to understand, I'll tell you what you need to focus more. Everything that we are discussing right now is background so that you do not get confused about any type of European funding, right? So ITN, there are 3 types of ITN. The first type is European Training Network, ETN, which is ETN. These are the more standard ITN, which is the most number available, where you are placed in Europe for several different type of topics, which aims to encourage creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, and the project focuses on interdisciplinary training and a combination of academic and industry expertise. Of course, the supervision is between network partners, usually sharing for a more well-rounded training experience. This is ETN. The second one is European Industrial Network, EID. How it is different is EID combines training from academic and non-academic partners. In the previous one, ETN, it is not a compulsion to have a non-academic partner. Here, you need to have academic and non-academic partners. It's a compulsion. PhD students spend at least 50% of their time on EID undertaking training in non-academic sector. Here, generally, the PhD students have 2 supervisors, one from academic and one from non-academic sectors. The third type of ITN is European Joint Doctorates, EZD. The objective of EZD is to promote international training and non-academic partnership. How it differentiates is a joint, double, or multiple doctorate degree is provided. What is a joint degree? It is a degree, a single PhD issued by 2 higher education institutions. What is a double or multiple degree? These are 2 or more separate national PhD diplomas issued by 2 or more higher education institutions. This is the 3 type of ITN. Why you need to understand is it's just to be aware that there are 3 different ways that ITN is being run, okay? It does not make a lot of difference for you at the moment. You need to focus on the things that we discuss now onwards. So what is unique about MSCA-ITN? The one important thing that you need to understand is it's multidisciplinary training. So what does that mean? It means that PhD students on ITN generally establish a career development plan along with their supervisor. They set out their research objective, their career objectives, and include a career plan which has steps on how to have publications, on participating in conferences and stuff like that. One major aspect of ITN is the PhD students get engaged in a number of networking activities, whether it be attending conferences, networking meetings, attending workshops, or collaborating with other ITN or research groups. Of course, at the end of each ITN, they organize a final network conference to discuss the outcomes and establish ongoing relationships. This is something quite interesting. So of course, if you have joined in, you need to first understand, are you eligible? So what does eligibility mean? There are some general things that you need to understand. ITN is offered for early stage researchers only. To be eligible for recruitment within an ITN project, at the date of recruitment, you should be within the first 4 years, which is full-time equivalent research experience of your research career. You should not have a doctoral degree. As you are all aware, there is no restriction based on nationality. Of course, sometimes we get questions on what does full-time equivalent research experience mean. It is something that is measured from the date when you obtained your degree, which could be master's degree, which will entitle you to embark on a doctorate, right? So you should be within your first 4 years of full-time equivalent research experience. These are generic rules. However, there is one specific rule regarding mobility. So you must not have resided or carried out your main activity, which would include working or studying in the country where you have been recruited for more than 12 months in the last 3 years. What does that mean? You need to understand that, for instance, if you are an Australian, you want to go to a university which is in Spain, for instance, you should not have studied or you should not have lived in Spain in the last 3 years for more than 12 months. That is one of the mobility rules, okay? Now, where in Europe can you find MSCA-ITN? You need to understand that there are these 27 EU member states, and then there are 16 associated countries where you can go. Generally, we receive this question, can I apply with an institution in the UK because of the Brexit impact? The answer is yes, you can still apply, because until 2020, all the people who want to apply can still be hosted by UK institutions. What about funding? This is something that fellows generally need to understand what type of funding or how much funding do they receive. This is an idea of, there are two types of funding which you need to be aware. There are these early stage researcher funding, which is received by the researcher. Then there are institutional funding, which is received by the hosting institution. Of course, you need to understand that a living allowance, mobility allowance, family allowance, everything that you see here is given to your host institution. The host institution passes it on to you. Let's understand first of all what is living allowance. Living allowance is everything, is basically sort of your salary, right? It's a very generous fellowship which allows you to have 3,270 euros approximately in average. However, what you need to understand is there are country correlation coefficient, which means that the amount will be adjusted slightly depending upon the cost of living in the particular country. This is one thing that you need to bear in mind. The other thing is mobility allowance. It's because you are traveling to Europe. This is something that you receive for your own personal travels, right? Then you have a family allowance. Irrespective of you having your family with you in Europe or not, if you have a family, if you can establish that, you will receive 500 euros. This is something that is for early stage researchers. Now you have the institutional funds that is being received by the host institution, which is research, training, and networking costs, 1,800 euros per month. What does it cover? It covers everything that is related to your research related. For instance, could be if you want to attend a conference, if you want to travel for some data collection, these are something that the institution will provide you from their own 1,800 budget. And then of course, there is this management and indirect cost that the institution receives for their own expenses that they are incurring on you, right? So this is the funding part. What you need to understand is in any ITN project, the Marie Curie funding can support researchers for a maximum period of 36 months. There is no exception to this. So if you, for some reason, have to extend your doctoral thesis for more than 36 months, then you will need to find additional financial support, and you need to discuss this with your supervisor and all the stuffs, right? So there is one last thing that I need to mention about funding. The total amount that you receive varies from employer to employer, as in universities to universities or companies to companies, even within the same country. This is because employer as well as employee pay certain taxes and social security, which will be deducted from the gross salary. These are gross amount, right? So this is the funding aspect. Now you need to understand how do you apply to these ITNs. The first thing that you need to understand, you are not going to apply to an ITN. You are going to apply to a PhD through an ITN product. This is something very, needs a very careful attention from you. You can see this. I have made like 6 steps, which indicates what are the steps in an ITN. What concerns is for you is from step 4 onwards. So of course, ITN is when a consortium is formed, they put forward a proposal, if their proposal is funded, they receive grant from the commission. This is all happening in the background. After that, what happens is within the ITN project, they release calls for PhD candidates. This is where things become interesting for you. Once the call for PhD candidates are open, then you need to put your application, you get selected, and then you have your job contract. Applying for a MSCA PhD position is very much like applying for a job role. Projects have already been set by the beneficiaries and partner organization. All you have to do is the one that interests you, you need to apply to that, right? We will see how you will find these type of opportunities. But what type of documents do you need to provide? The first thing that you need to provide is proof that you are qualified to undertake a PhD. This could be anything like relevant master's degree or an equivalent qualification. The another thing is a transcript of your grades, a CV detailing prior experience of projects or any publication, a personal statement detailing why you are suitable for the project. Then you have to provide contact details for 2 or more individuals that can provide a reference. And the last one is certificate of language proficiency. This is something that every individual ITN project might require. And there could be some other eligibility requirement from a specific ITN project. So this is the usual document that is being requested. So now you have already understand that these are the background, this is how things work. The important aspect, where do you find the open PhD positions? So what you need to do is, all the MSCA-ITN open positions are posted on the EURAXESS portal. When you'll receive this slide, you can, of course, click on these photographs, which will take you to the website itself. But it's just the EURAXESS website, and you can see on the EURAXESS website there is something called Find Jobs, right? So after you click on the Find Jobs on the EURAXESS website, it will take you to something which is Jobs and Funding, and then you go on to the European Research Program, and then you have this Marie Curie Actions. Marie Curie Actions, there are currently 175 open positions. Of course, once you click on that, you will receive something like this, which has the list of open positions. 175 are search results. So for instance, in the first one where it shows 7+ PhD position available, of course, this is not counting to 175, right? So 175 positions means there will be more positions. The number of items are 175. What you need to understand is when you click on this, you have different application deadlines, you have research field, you will have all the relevant information that you need to apply. Then you can also filter and sort by post date, deadlines, and everything else on the EURAXESS portal. Okay, so if you are concerned that, okay, if there are only 175 posts, of course, there will be more positions, but if there are only 175 posts, what you need to understand is, for the 2020 ITN, the results were published on May 26, less than 1 month ago. What does that mean? It means that 2,000 early stage researcher positions are going to open in the near future, right? So this is still not already included there because the projects are still determining how to put forward their vacancies. So if you want to already have a look at what type of funded projects are there, I've given a link there. You can have a look at it in more details to preempt what are the different sectors or what are the different topics that such vacancies will come out on, right? So how do you remain informed about these type of vacancies? You need to understand that EURAXESS, which we are talking a lot, what is EURAXESS? This is Researchers in Motion. So it's an initiative of the European Commission. Of course, it is backed by the ERA, which is the European Research Area. It supports researcher mobility and career development. The ultimate aim is to enhance scientific collaboration between Europe and rest of the world. All the services that EURAXESS provide are free of charge. It's important that you understand what EURAXESS provides. We can categorize it into 4 things. First pillar is jobs and funding. You might have seen that we clicked on jobs and it took to all the open positions. However, if you look at job offers on EURAXESS research related jobs, there are currently 11,030 research job positions available. And then there are funding opportunities. There are approximately 207 funding opportunities available at the moment for any research. The second pillar is information and assistance. So for instance, if you are trying to apply to an ITN, you get selected, you are going to go to do your PhD, for instance, in Germany. So what you can do is, if you want to understand country-specific information, or if you want practical advice on how to move forward with your visa applications and stuff like that, you can also have a look at the EURAXESS national portal. So Germany has their own, all these countries that are included, there are 40 national portal which has specific information to help you move to that particular place. And of course, there are more than 600 EURAXESS support centers. What are these centers? These are centers which are established to support researchers free of charge of any sort of questions that you might have before moving abroad or after you have moved to a particular country. So for instance, in Italy, there might be 10 EURAXESS support center, which will be able to provide you with any sort of information that you might need with your relocation. That is the second pillar. The third pillar is partnering. Of course, you need to understand that EURAXESS has a wealth of members who you can collaborate with if you are looking for an host organization, or if you are looking at finding somebody who you can partner up with in terms of doing research. There are currently 96,833 registered members and 17,414 registered organizations. The last pillar of EURAXESS is EURAXESS Worldwide. This is something that is important to understand, because there are these pillars and there are these EURAXESS Worldwide centers, which are going to provide information to all of you who are not in Europe or in the associated countries. So of course, this brings us to EURAXESS Australia and New Zealand, which is the organization that I represent. We started operation from January of 2020. And what we generally do is we do these type of webinars. We help all the researchers in trying to understand how they can apply for certain fundings, what are the type of funding that are available, what type of useful information are there. So I'd encourage you to sign up and become a member because it's for free. And generally, what type of webinars we do? We do postdoctoral webinars like the individual fellowship. The current one is the doing funded PhD in Europe. So after this webinar, our intention is to do PhD in European member states, which is going to be a webinar series. So of course, you'll notice that at the end of this particular webinar, a survey of 2 questions will appear where we will ask you about which member state is your ideal location to move for your PhD. And looking at what your response is, we'll try to bring tailored webinars for that specific member state so that it matches the needs. I think that is it from my side. Before I pass it on to our next speakers, if you have any questions, I'd request you to please send me an email at the given email address, and I'd encourage you to sign up for the free membership. Of course, since you are on your laptop at the moment, just feel free to type EURAXESS Australia and New Zealand on Facebook or on LinkedIn, and we will appear. What we generally do is we, on weekdays, post such funding opportunities, research-related news and stuffs once a day, so that you do not miss out on any sort of opportunities that are there. And of course, when the vacancies are out, we generally post them on our social network as well. I think that is it from my side. And now I'll pass the presenter rights to Jacinta.
Okay, yeah, so firstly, just thanks again for the invitation, for this opportunity to share about my experience as a Marie Curie funded PhD candidate. So we've just heard a nice overview of the ITN program from Nishant. So I wanted to talk about just more about my personal experience and my thoughts about being a participant in the ITN. So firstly, a little bit about myself. I'm from Perth. I did my bachelor's here. And then after that, I moved to New South Wales, where I did my master's. About 6 to 8 months before I was due to finish my master's, I started thinking about what I was going to do afterwards. And the plan wasn't necessarily to do a PhD, but I figured that if I wanted to stay in this field, it's sort of a bit under the radar, a bit underdeveloped in Australia. So I knew that I would have to look at opportunities in Europe or in the US. But so I ended up applying for this ITN, and I started in October 2016. So I was based at the University of Liverpool in the UK, which is where I've been since. So my ITN is titled the Optimization of Medical Accelerators, or OMA, and our ITN sought to address the different challenges related to ion beam therapy, which is a new emerging type of cancer treatment using particle accelerator-based technology. So the ITN itself was classified in life sciences. So just bear in mind that some of my experiences might be different just based on the field and because I was based in the UK. So, excuse me, for me, in the very beginning, I actually didn't really have any idea about what Horizon 2020 was or what any of the funded opportunities there would be in Europe. So yeah, hopefully at the end of this seminar, all of you have a much better idea of this whole process than I did back then. So my ITN, it offered 15 projects, so they were hiring 15 fellows all across Europe. And so the application itself was quite a long form. You have to fill in all the details that Nishant has mentioned. So for me specifically, you had to write a statement about why you were applying for the specific project. You could put forward 3 preferences. The ITN itself had a website with all the description of the projects and the institutes, so the partners involved. So it's definitely important to do your research to write a good statement. I think the only requirement was that I needed to have finished my master's by the time that I started in October. So there was a bit of pressure for me to finish my master's on time. Yeah, in terms of the mobility, if you're like me, I'd never been to Europe before. So I was also the first fellow to be hired. So I was looking at this list of 15 different projects and trying to choose which one was best. And I could basically choose any of them. And then, of course, preparing to move, you need to start thinking about a visa. So most likely you'll need to apply for a visa to work in whatever respective country, and then to start thinking about when you'll move, so to book your flights and where you'll move. So my fellowship, I was firstly employed as a Marie Curie Fellow at the University of Liverpool. I was enrolled in a PhD a bit afterwards. So with my specific position, my office was actually based at a lab about 45 minutes from the University of Liverpool itself. So some of the other fellows in my network, they didn't have any interaction with their university. It was solely just for their PhD. And they were based all of the time at their other research institute or company. So for me, it was good because I lived in Liverpool and I would just commute to the office every day. So this is a map of the United Kingdom. And in England, the northwest of England, this orange part here, that's where Liverpool's located. And so that's where I moved to. And I was firstly employed as staff and then registered as a student after, which was great because that gave me the best of both worlds. So what does it mean to be a fellow? So it is a bit different compared to a lot of your other colleagues. So if you're doing a PhD, so it depends on what sort of position, what sort of job you apply for, and what your host institute is like. So for me, I was based at a lab and my day-to-day contacts were my research group, which were mostly based at the lab as well. And so depending if you're based at a company, your timetable and your commitments might look like any other staff member who works at the company. If you're based at a university or a research institute, you might have a bit more flexibility and independence with this. So I was based at the University of Liverpool, which happened to be the host institute of the entire network. So my supervisor was the coordinator of the OMA project, which was really great because if I had any questions or queries, I could always speak to him or the project manager. It was also quite a unique situation because my supervisor had coordinated 4 other ITNs before. So people in my research group were also fellows from other ITNs. Yeah, and so, but it really does depend on your host institute. As a PhD and fellow though, you will have a lot of commitments, more likely that you'll have more responsibilities than your peers who are just doing PhDs. So you might have some kind of academic component that you need to fulfill, so lectures, seminars, different progress reports, of course your thesis is a big one. And on top of that, being part of an ITN, you also have several other commitments, including milestone or deliverable reports. You may go on several secondments, outreach, and lots of different events which the ITN itself will host and organize. So what that meant was I had an extremely busy 3 years. I finished my ITN. My employment contract ended in October of last year. So over those 36 months that I was employed as a fellow, I submitted 3 formal reports. I had 2 secondments, one at a company in the Netherlands and one at CERN, a research institute in Switzerland. Our ITN ran 8 different events. I helped out at 7 outreach events. One of these were a symposium that was organized by the OMA project. Outside of that, I attended 4 conferences, and I went to at least 5 schools and workshops where I contributed to lots of different research-related activities. I visited lots and lots of cities. If I've counted correctly, 10 countries over my 3 years with work-related things, and countless memories over these past 36 months. So I decided to show a whole bunch of pictures to illustrate my experience. So we had lots of different events that were run by OMA. So the first picture is the very first event that we had, where we finally got to meet all the other OMA fellows in person. And then the photo under that is our very last event. It was our final conference at the end of last year. And then, of course, outreach and the secondment that I did. So my fellowship brought me to lots of different places where I could share my research, including the US, back to Australia and Adelaide, and lots of different activities in the UK. And of course, all of the research and the work is important, but an ITN and the experience is not just about work and research. Part of the main reason to provide the opportunities and to allow researchers to be mobile and to move to different countries to do research. Part of that is to be able to experience life and to experience working in another country and in another culture. So not just to equip yourself with the tools to be able to carry out your research project, but also to establish collaborations, a network of people in your field, and to really build a career from there. To me, that was the biggest sort of positive and the most significant thing that I really appreciated with the whole ITN experience. So if I could just summarize everything into some positive and challenges now that we've taken a nice trip down memory lane. So overall, there was so many positives. These don't cover it. But first off, I didn't really have any idea of what the research landscape would be like in Europe. I'm not super familiar with how it is in Australia and New Zealand. But what I can say is that doing a research degree in Europe is really, really great. Just there's so much happening all the time. It's so dynamic. There's conferences, workshop schools happening all over. It just feels like you're part of a really thriving and active community in terms of the research and academic opportunities you have. So it's a really well-funded position and the project itself. So you shouldn't really be restricted in terms of financials to be able to propose different training events and schools and experiments and whatever you want to do in the fellowship itself. And the ITN has to organize lots of different events. And the combination of these two just provides so many opportunities to grow your research. Of course, you will travel a lot. So for me, coming from Perth, it's at least a 3-hour flight to any capital city nearby. In Europe, it's pretty much 3 hours. Within 3 hours, you can get to any capital city in Europe. So you will be traveling a lot. And in doing so, you will be very independent. You will be considered an independent researcher. And with that brings several challenges. So you will be expected to produce at a high level. You will have more commitments and responsibilities than your peers. You will attend lots and lots of events. So I think I was traveling once every 2 to 3 months for work-related things. So it meant that I just had to plan really well. You have to organize your time very well. There might also be some restrictions based on your host institute. So all of the fellows will have different experiences within the same ITN. Because one fellow is able to do something, or they might have another opportunity, or they have several mandatory things that they need to do, does not necessarily mean that it's the same for another fellow, even in the same country. So there are differences between the different projects and host institutes. And of course, if you're moving countries, there are barriers to do with a whole new country, culture, different language. And more likely than not, you will be pretty far from home. So the time difference might be quite large, and you will be away from your usual and comfortable social and emotional network. So just to finalize with some suggestions and tips. So it's important to do your research in trying to figure out what sort of project you would want to do. So what ITN, definitely look into the supervisor, the institute that you'll be hosted at, as well as the country. So it's significant because this is where you're going to live and work for the next 3 years of your life. So really make sure that you will be happy working and living in wherever your respective country and host institute will be. So there are some logistical preparations that you need to think about. So make sure that you meet all of the requirements in terms of the application process. For the relocation, you might need to apply for a visa. For me, I had to pay for my visa up front. So that means I had to organize some savings beforehand, before my move. If you're selected, you'll be sent the grant agreement. So take a read through that to make sure that you know what to expect and what you're entitled to. And I think a significant thing is to plan, to get an idea of what you'll do afterwards. So it is very difficult to finish a PhD in the 3 years just because you have so many commitments and there's so much to do. You'll be learning lots and it will be a very busy time. But because the positions are only funded for 3 years, you will need to figure out what you're going to do afterwards. So if you apply for a visa for the employment for the 3-year contract, it could mean that you'd need to apply for another visa or a student visa or something else to help you finish writing up afterwards. I think most people organize some sort of arrangement with their supervisor and their current host to be able to have an extension, but this might not always be possible. So it's important to think about it and to discuss it. As well as if you plan to continue living on in that country, if you want to uptake permanent residency or citizenship, sort of need to think about what the clauses for continuing that is, if you need to live in the country for a certain time or not travel so much. But yeah, it is a very significant life decision. But that being said, a PhD is challenging no matter where and what field you do it in. For me, this ITN was a really, really great opportunity for personal and career growth. I don't think that I would have gotten the same opportunities and resources to be able to do what I did domestically or with any other program. So I definitely highly recommend it. Good luck. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email or of course ask them and we can answer them after the talks. Otherwise, send me a message or tweet me on Twitter. Thanks for listening.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jacinta. That was really interesting, and I'm sure everyone could see the passion that you have for the work and all the fun you had traveling in Europe as well. Of course, before moving on to Katelin, I just put forward a trivia for you, and there will be a poll that will appear on your screen, which asks you, under Horizon 2020, how many PhD candidates will have received support from the MSCA by 2020? What do you think is the answer? Is it less than 10,000, 10,000 to 20,000, or more than 20,000? I'll give you 3 more seconds, so hurry up, or maybe 5 more seconds. I can see that 70% have already voted. 3, 2, one. So I'll close the poll now. And the response I have received is 36% is think that less than 10,000, 50 think 10,000 to 20,000, and 14% is think more than 20,000. And the minority are correct, because to be precise, there are 25,000 PhDs who have received funding. But you need to understand, under MSCA, it's not just ITN, but ITN and co-fund. Co-fund is a whole different funding opportunity where we will do similar webinar later in the year. But ITN and co-fund constituted to 25,000 PhDs from 2014 till 2020. So it's a very large number. And just to give you an idea, for researchers in Australia and New Zealand, 29 from Australia and 7 from New Zealand. So I think there is still a lot of possibility because it's not bounded by nationality. I think you have a lot of potential to avail these generous funding. One more indication before passing on to Katelin. All the slides that you are seeing will be provided to you, so do not worry. If you have questions, do not hesitate to write on the chat function, because I can see a lot of questions there. We will take them after Katelin's presentation. So now I'll pass it on to Katelin. I'll give you the presenter right so that you can tell them your experience.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Nishant for the opportunity to share my experience. It's also been a nice reflection experience for me. And I've already seen a lot of similarities in Jacinta's experience, so I hope I can also share some experiences, because I'm basically halfway through the fellowship. So yeah, so I'm in the thick of it, I guess you could say. So let's see, here we go. Okay, yeah, so first a bit of my background. I'm also from Perth in West Australia, and I went to Curtin University for my bachelor's. There I did a Bachelor of Science, majoring in environmental health and safety. Then after this, the first thing I was motivated by was to travel to Europe and to live in Europe. And I also wanted to further my education more in the sustainability realm. And I actually basically looked for different scholarships available to international students or non-European students within Europe. And I applied for a master's at the Utrecht University in the Netherlands. And there I was accepted. So I studied a Master of Environmental Science, which was titled Sustainable Development. And then within this, there was 4 tracks, and my choice was within environmental change and ecosystems. So this was more natural science based on land and water management. Yes. And then so basically finishing this, I was still living in the Netherlands in Amsterdam, and I then applied for this PhD. So I will say more about that after. But currently I'm calling from Lisbon in Portugal, where I'm at the Universidade Aberta doing my doctorate, and the title of the doctorate is Social Sustainability and Development. So I think you can see already my experience in Europe has allowed me to specialize much more within sustainability, which was very important to me. And so I thought I would talk in a chronological order. So how did I find the PhD and the fellowship? Like I said, I was living in Amsterdam at the moment, and I didn't necessarily it wasn't my first drive to do a PhD or to find this fellowship. I sort of knew that I wanted to move to another European country, and I wanted to learn more and gain more experience within Europe, because also within this field, I felt that European research and work was much more advanced than in Australia. So I wanted to maximize my opportunities to learn before coming back to Australia. And I wanted a new challenge. So essentially I was on ResearchGate, which if you're not familiar, it's almost the social media for researchers, where you can publish your projects and papers and collaborate with other people studying or researching similar topics. So I was finishing my thesis, I think, and I saw the project advertised, and it kind of sort of looks like this. So I took this screenshot the other day. It's not exactly relevant for me, but there's all these sort of postdocs and researcher positions posted, like in addition to Marie Curie fellowships. And basically, I saw it advertised here, and then I thought to apply. So if I talk about the application process, I didn't know at the time, but now I learned that there was over 300 applicants for 15 positions. So I applied by, as Nishant described, sending all the academic records, CV. I had 3 letters of recommendation, which I had 2 from professors at my master's university to sort of prove my scientific knowledge or relevance of knowledge, and also my ability to write well, and my thesis was of a high quality. And then I also had a final letter of recommendation from a previous employer in Perth to sort of demonstrate my personal capabilities and work commitments and whatnot. I then had to do a Skype interview with, I was accepted to the next round, and I had a Skype interview with 4 professors, and they actually did ask quite questions on a content level to make sure I knew the up-to-date sort of knowledge in the field, and also things about how I would handle situations, talking to people in academia and in industry, and what sort of strategies I would employ and things like this. So it was a tough interview, I would say. And I would say that I also used my Australian perspective as a strength, and saying that I can bring something different from my experience and to the network, which is, I think, a big part of the intention and the purpose of these networks and fellowships. And I'm the only Australian, so I think that it worked, I guess. And I will say that I had to have a very long wait. I think one of the things, I'm not sure if it's the same for everyone, but as much as it's an opportunity for the fellows, it's also an opportunity for universities to go through this process and to host a fellow. So often some universities haven't gone through this process before, and especially the professors that apply for this grant. So it's a big learning opportunity for not just us, but also for the professors and for the people involved. So I think that's a constant trend throughout these sort of fellows, that unless everyone on board has done it before, there's a lot of administrative things that everyone is learning, but there are a lot of resources available through the European Commission and EURAXESS to support, but that can be challenging to find the right information and to get confirmation of these things. So I think I applied at the start of March, and I finally found out that I got it at the end of June. So yeah, it was a long period, and then I only received the work contract at the very end of August. So it was also quite a lengthy time. So I think that's something maybe to keep in mind or be prepared about, or to push for, to be proactive in this process. So I'll just say a little bit about my ITN. So it's called CRESTing, and that stands for Circular Economy, Sustainability Implications and Guiding Progress. So essentially it's a combination more in the social science field, but we're looking at the circular economy model, which is an alternative model of production and consumption to try and minimize the generation of waste and to revaluize waste. And we're looking at how this concept and model interacts with existing sustainability projects and initiatives, and to ensure that there aren't these trade-offs, that we're actually making things worse or whatnot. And so, the same as Jacinta, there's 15 researchers. We all look at different aspects of this. Some are more focused on design, the social impacts, employment, policy level, measuring assessment. So it's quite nice to have a very holistic approach and complementing each other. We are based at 8 universities in Europe, and there's also 3 partner universities. So we have people based in Portugal, Austria, the UK, Italy, France, the Netherlands. And we have partner universities in Africa and China. So, and we also have public and private partner organizations. So I think that's also another strength, that within each country, there are relationships and connections with the public sector, but also in industry. And it's really a source of network. We are all looking at different parts and all involved with different people. But if I'm interested in some sort of industry in Austria, I can easily ask and have these connections. which is really a strength of the project, and that's part of my team in the picture in Utrecht. And so just some things of my experience so far as well that I think are interesting. So as I said, I'm the only Australian, and 7 of 15 are non-European. So they do really try to hire non-Europeans to bring strength to the networks, mainly from South America, to be honest. But I think we were talking before these presentations, Australian researchers in Europe is quite rare. I've only met a few in conferences, and they usually have a British wife or something like this. So I think that there's really an opportunity for Australians and New Zealanders or any other countries basically to take advantage of these grants. So far, I've traveled to 7 countries. Of course, some things are put on hold right now with the current situation, but it's been, yeah, like Jacinta, I've traveled a lot. Sometimes it's very exhausting, but they're very good opportunities. Within my position, I have secondments, which is a part of the mobility requirements. So my main supervisor is in Portugal, but my second supervisor is in Italy, in Sicily. So technically within the grant agreement, I should spend 3 months in Messina in Italy. I should also spend 1 month in Pescara in Italy, which is another location where a colleague of mine is situated. And I also have allowance to go for 3 months to Taiwan, because we have a partner organization of the Taiwan Circular Economy Network. So yeah, there's a really good structure and good format that allows me to travel and take advantage of the associated partners of the network. Yeah, and I've been to a lot of workshops, academic conferences and trainings that I think it's really invaluable. I think compared to doing, of course I have not done a PhD in Australia, but I think being based in Europe, there's a lot going on and it's very easy to access, and even online now, of course, we're in the correct time zone to access these kind of events and networking opportunities. And I would say that if you were to move to another country by yourself, it's of course really difficult, and this fellowship and project allows you to have the support and even the visa support or whatnot. I also don't know that many Australians in Portugal, purely because the visa process is really difficult. So this is another way that these kind of fellowships are not only strengthening you as a researcher, but also as in your personal life, allowing you to do things that you most likely wouldn't be able to do without the support of the project. And this is my group in Troyes in France. And then I also went to China last year to 2 academic conferences. So that was a really amazing opportunity. And just to sort of also say some advantages, I guess, compared to not being in an ITN, or to your colleagues that are just completing a PhD with the university. Within the network of us 15 researchers, we are really good friends. We all have similar interests. We talk a lot, so there's many opportunities to collaborate. I'm doing a project with 2 other colleagues within the network, so we've already written 1 paper, we've collected data, we're going to write another one together. And yeah, this opportunity is not only good for the research, but also of course helps to decrease the loneliness, I guess, which is often associated with a PhD. And yeah, so as Nishant described at the start, it's very generous research budgets. It's really, really generous compared to the other PhD researchers. So you have a lot more responsibility, but a lot more opportunities to travel and to network and present the research. The mobility requirements, the opportunities to travel and to network, again, compared to other PhD opportunities, it's really incredible. The resources, like I said, through the network, even if I don't have access to a book, I can ask immediately to one of the other 15 researchers, and we can share things or share conferences, webinars. So within the network or professors, I can get extra feedback. It's a really strong group that wants the best for everyone. I think this is really an incredible experience. And yeah, finally, the networking opportunities in the end, like as part of the outputs of the network, we are writing a book. We will write a book together. We're like trying to complement our work. Even within my project that I'm doing with the 2 other researchers, we've contacted over 500 companies for some things and interviews. So yeah, by establishing yourself as a team and a group, and the exposure of the group, it's really good for your career and the research. And so just to sort of summarize sort of final advice or things that I have learned, I think a big thing as researchers now are being pushed to use social media much more and to communicate the research and to ensure that there's actually an impact on society, not just staying within the realms of academia. So I think it's really important to take advantage of this for your future career prospects. So for example, yeah, to stay up to date with the research in the field, if there's articles that you read and maybe there's a name of a researcher pops up many times, like follow them on ResearchGate or Twitter or LinkedIn, you know, and because they are sharing their own publications or opportunities maybe that they are involved with. Also, another thing is follow hashtags of topics, even if it's sustainability or a specific, I don't know, other topic, you know, you can really find sources of information there well, and also opportunities. And I would also say the universities, by doing research like on the types of universities, they are always sharing opportunities as well as perhaps projects that they're doing. So it's also a nice idea to do research into different universities which have institutes or something of interest to you, and then follow them on social media. And I would say it was a part of the application process. Like we've said, there's a big opportunity for Australians and New Zealanders and non-Europeans basically to apply. So I think this is really a strength, and you should tell them why this perspective will strengthen the network and the future relations in moving forward. I think it's really important to communicate your ability to move and live in another country, because it's a very challenging experience, and they want to be sure that you can handle this. And it's a risk for them, of course, because you don't want to hire someone and then them quit after 6 months or something. So I think that's really important to communicate. And if you have any experience with traveling or whatnot, even put this on your CV. I put that I did a 6-month backpacking in Europe, just to let them know that I have an enjoyment with traveling. And the communication skills are really important, because like I said, there's this big push now in research to ensure that there is an impact in society. So by explaining how, not only talking in seminars, but communicating with all different types of people through social media or anything like this about research topics is really important, and really a strength, I think, in your application for a PhD. And be patient. Like I said, these things often take time, and there's a lot of applicants and whatnot. So I think that's a really important factor, that perhaps because of the scale of these projects, there's a lot of work going in behind the scenes. But overall, it's been a really great experience so far, and I'm sure it will be. And I'm really thankful that I was able to have this opportunity. And I look forward to gaining as much experience as I can, and then strengthening my career prospects in the future when I return to Australia. So overall, thank you for listening. Of course, if you have any questions, type them in the chat, or please feel free to email me or contact me on LinkedIn about the project or any questions that you have.
Before I close out, I need to give a big thank you to Jacinta and Katelin for their availability. It's been a pleasure having both of you with us to share your experience. I'm sure all of us had a lot of good idea on how to move forward with putting together this PhD proposal, and our willingness to be involved in European funding and European landscape. Thank you very much once again. And for everyone who has joined in, do not forget to just type in EURAXESS Australia and New Zealand, and follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, so that you remain updated with all our day-to-day updates regarding any such opportunities.